welcome. I'm Bob Mahan, advisor at Lummus Digital, and I'm excited to bring to you the next iteration in our discussion on AI, the margin conversation, why AI's ROI belongs to operations and not IT. Last October, we tackled with a different panel the trust question, whether AI in the process industries could move beyond the black box, as we call it, by grounding models and first principles. I think we proved pretty clearly in that session that we can and should move past this trust question. But today is a deliberate part two. Having answered the question of whether AI can be trusted in our operations, we ask the harder question. Where should the actual ownership and the value land through these activities, right? I mean, how do we ensure that we get the value out of applying AI in our operations? And then how should we govern and own that application? Because in many cases across the industry, the AI activities are owned by IT or digital teams, but the margin sits with the business and operations. When these two are misaligned, obviously pilot stall, ownership and leadership are disengaged, and the impact in many cases not able to be translated to larger scale. So to unpack this, we brought four leaders who are really working right at the interface of this activity. Dr. Mohammed Alhashim, lead of the Quantum Computing and Optimization Group at Aramco. He returns from our October panel where he gave great contributions there, and he brings an advanced research perspective from inside one of the world's leading operators in the energy space. Anil, Mathew, head of digital transformation at Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Ltd, leading digital across Asia's largest integrated refining and marketing organization, and sitting really at this interface between IT and operations. Dr. Gabor Kees, strategic expert at the MOL Group, more than 2 decades in refining, technology development, and downstream operations, and specializing in digital twins, real-time optimization, and actually explainable AI, which is a really important topic in a lot of these dialogues that we're having across the value chain. And then lastly, Mohammed, Global Vice President of Core Transformation and Enterprise Excellence at Indovinya, accountable for enterprise-wide transformation in the specialty chemical space, where margin, of course, is key to the differentiation of this company's success. But before we get into the panel, which I'm excited to get their feedbacks, I want to hear from you first. So let's get our first poll on the screen. We're going to have a few of these through the session. So in your organization, who effectively owns the ROI of AI initiatives? Is it the IT or digital organization? Is it operations or plant leadership? Is it the business leadership? Is it shared, but maybe with unclear accountability, or is it really not measured at all? I'd be very curious on the feedback that we get. And we're getting some live data here, which is great. Looks like maybe the reason for the panel, we're seeing the results here in the answers to the poll. So we got a few seconds left here. Not sure if I ended. Okay. So, I mean, I think this tells us a lot. I think, obviously you see, some answers across the spectrum here, but shared, but with unclear accountability. I think I've lived in many corporate scenarios where this item comes out. And I think this is part of the reason for the discussion today, right? Which is, it's clear that the ROI, measuring it and the accountability for it is essential. But in many cases, I think because it's a newer initiative with shared ownership and collaboration, obviously across the organization, the accountability in many cases is shared, but it's unclear as to who's ultimately accountable. And then when it comes to taking risks and scaling these solutions, oftentimes that can become a barrier. So this is great feedback from the audience. I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to shift over to our team here. So look, I think we learned a lot from that. Anil, I'll start with you. HPCL runs some of the largest refining and marketing operations in Asia, and you sit at this juncture, as we talked about. In your experience, what changes, in terms of outcomes, performance, speed, adoption, when AI initiative is led by IT versus when it's pulled by operations for a specific margin target? And we'd love to hear your experience here.
Thank you, Bob. Very pertinent question, especially looking at the way the poll is gone. Basically, I would say it's a change in mindset. When the operation is leading or when IT is leading, it is a change in the mindset, how we approach a problem. So when it is led by IT, the focus is more on the tool implementation. Our success metrics are little different it is more technical, like system availability, how much is system availability, number of deployment, or how much is the model accuracy. So minded, by no means this is not necessary. I'm not telling it is not necessary. It is very important. But for operation, what matters is how a particular implementation is helping improving their business metrics. So when operation is the sponsor of any initiative, the conversation basically shift from can we build this model to how can we improve our OTIF or yield improvement by 5.5%, reduce energy by 2%. So the metrics actually become a totally different metrics. So understanding this particular thing, actually, this is how HPCL was typically IT led. HPCL has pivoted in the last year. When I was given this opportunity, I am from business. I'm not IT or a digital.
Yep.
I'm not a digital native guy, basically. I am from business. So when last year I've been assigned this opportunity, the objective was exactly the same: how to change the metrics into a slightly different part of it. So and still, I am from business, but I am heading digital. But still, any initiative like let me tell you, the supply chain initiative which is going on, it is led by the business. LPG is a sponsor for that. Digital is merely an enabler, and our finance is somebody who is measuring the baseline metrics and obviously the ROI which will come out of it. So the finance will be dealing with the baseline metrics and how we are going to measure it, and the business will be leading that, and digital will be merely an enabler. So that's
Excellent.
from my side, Bob.
Yeah, no, it's excellent feedback, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the problem being solved is what's important, not necessarily the tool being developed. And obviously you need the tool to be successful, but the end result is the objective, right? Is driving performance in the plant. Junaid, your title doesn't say digital, it says enterprise excellence, right? So when you're responsible for standing up a new AI or digital initiative, where do you place the ROI accountability, and what have you seen when it gets placed in the wrong spot? Love to hear your feedback on both successes and challenges you've seen there.
Yeah. So first, thank you for having me here. I think it's a great question and foundational to any transformation. Look, let me start by saying what a chemical company does. Like, I take some examples from me. We are in a business of creating value for our customers, right? At the same time, we're responsible for creating value for our shareholders. We want our working place to be one of the best, where our employees enjoy that workplace. So these are some of the key KPIs that follow. So anything we do must support our basic KPIs. And that is why you see my title is in transformation is we are trying to improve our business, our functions. We are trying to make our products more sustainable. And that's why my title is a business facing title. Now, digital may be a great tool to help us there. But if it doesn't improve any of the factors I have listed, it's of no use to us, right? There will be low adoption. People will not use it. They will not understand it. So that's why if you see my title does not have digital in it, but I have the responsibility of making the company a digital-enabled chemical company. That's my KPI as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Well said. Well said. Gabor, I mean, I'd love to get your feedback on this too, right? I mean, it's easy to fall in a trap of this being sort of an ownership question, like who's responsible from governance. But my view is probably it's more than just who owns it. It's actually how it changes the culture based on the accountability and the way you've targeted the ownership. So can you talk about this impact of, does it have an impact on success and driving the value based on how you try to put that accountability? Any experiences you have there would be great.
For sure. I could talk 3 hours, but I try to be very practically, the situation is same as Anil mentioned, that operation, we use this tool, so we create the money, we make a decision, this is just a tool, we show up the margin. But this is not that much simple fact, because our system is a little bit fragmented currently. We will see how it will change in the upcoming 5 years. I expect some big changes for the upcoming period, even organizational type. But we have IT people who are mostly orbiting around data science. We have process simulators who are working in the operations, still the old way. And they are giving the modeling background. And I think I don't have to tell anybody here that a proper model requires a proper margin improvement. A kind of a bad model, low accuracy model, you will show up nothing. Even a very good operator cannot show it. So I do believe that this margin improvement, which is anyway kind of a trade-off from modeling point of view, trade-off between the robustness and also the complexity of the model. That's another factor which is changing, and just another twist that when you are building such kind of a models, anytime still the domain knowledge is on the operational side. So it's, just switching from IT to OT, IT to OT. Obviously, IT is way better in making agile project management, just pushing through the developments and, formalizing what is needed. But, without knowing what to exactly put together, I think it's definitely not possible. So for me, the success factor and then the whole story is revolving around this kind of common work or joint work between OT and IT, which is supposed to appear in sharing the benefit. I think for those people in our company especially, we are just making models and we are contributing to the margin, but we are not counted as a margin makers. Those people definitely margin makers. So in the ROI calculation, somehow it should be allocated the benefit which is coming out from the good models. Good models you can identify, how good the prediction is, how accurate, how quick, there are those factors which you can use for this reason.
Excellent. Excellent feedback. And, I think this IT/OT challenge is a critical one, not just in AI tools, but in all kinds of deployment and tools, right? And ensuring that you're having the right collaboration across those groups, both in, not only in the deployment of the tool, but in many cases, the development of the model in the first place to make sure the right components are there. So I think it's excellent. And with that, I'm going to maybe pivot to the R&D side and technology side. So Mohammed, I think your organization, you're right at the core of, in many cases, developing some of these key models that are being applied. You gave great feedback on sort of, the challenges with trust and AI and grounding these models, right, in first principles in our last session. But, inside inside Aramco, in your role, where you're developing new tools and capabilities to apply in operations, what's critical for the tool to be adopted and used to deliver the objective? We don't want things to just be developed and the success is developing the tool, right? The success is applying it. What makes it work at Aramco? Like, what are some, what are your thoughts on how to ensure the deployment and use and ownership of the tool over time by the rest of the organization is key?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Bob, for actually inviting me. And you reminded me of the previous panel discussion. And I think, at Aramco, we have gone a long way in basically trying to align the R&D activities and technology development with the business needs. And where we reached basically at this point is that we developed metrics to monitor the value that each technology generates. And this metric is, we call technology realized value. It monitors the value that the technology generates when we benchmark the operation when it's being done using the technology that is being deployed versus the old practice. Mm-hmm. And these values are basically that are calculated come from the operator themselves, mm-hmm. who use the technology. And based on this metric, there is a decision process on how to scale up the solution and implement it across the organization. As you know, like in Aramco, we operate like several facilities of similar basically setup. So it's easier for us to scale up a solution from one facility to the other. So we go through the full cycle of internal, I would call it commercialization, to tell us how basically the customer different customers respond to the technology and how the value basically that is generated is affected by the different objectives of different organizations. They share similar KPIs, but they could have different cultures. So they the value that is generated from the same product that is being deployed in different facilities could vary, mm-hmm. because of the behavior of the operator. And that's something that we have basically noticed. But it's very difficult to add to what my colleagues basically discussed, that the business or the end user of the technology is the ultimate owner of the whatever we develop. If they are accountable, the technology development will be driven in a purposeful way because the challenge is being well defined and there is a drive to basically deploy the technology and get feedback, and also the data sharing and the other technical challenges can be resolved if the operator is in desperate need of the technology that you are developing.
Well, I think that calls out another point, which is, you know, targeting these tools where the operator really has a challenge, I think is one of your fastest ways to ensure better adoption, right? If they can see the value of where you're applying it, it's only going to help them in delivering their KPIs, right? It's only going to help them deliver more value. And so the speed with which they adopt probably will improve if you're thinking carefully about, you know, again, addressing real critical day-to-day problems that they have. So great feedback from the group. I think we have clarity on the ownership question, but only translates into margin, right, in the daily workflow if you're targeting at the right areas. So, you know, where do you expect AI to deliver the largest margin impact in your operations over the next 2 years? I think that's the next question, and we're going to bring up the poll for this. And before we get to the panel, we're going to get the feedback from you, the audience. So, again, where do you expect AI to deliver the largest margin impact in your organizations? Be very curious on the type of activities, whether it's through yield, throughput, product mix, is it energy and utilities, reliability, which I think is a huge one from my experience, and faster planning, scheduling decisions. I think we're seeing a clear winner starting to emerge here. Just let this go to the end of the minute here. I think we're seeing a clear winner. Oh, yeah. So I think the clear winner, right, on reliability and unplanned downtime avoidance, right? I think all of us know the severe impact on margins that reliability and unplanned downtime can have, right? I think no huge surprise there. I think obviously all of these categories are areas where it can be applied, though, and I think you're going to see applications of it. You know, I think a critical point that we often get to, and I'll start with Anil, is, you know, it's one thing to develop a model, apply it, and use it to sort of validate what you're already doing in operations, right? To sort of, you know, reinforce the decisions that are already being made, or maybe running a model in parallel to your operations, sort of, you know, in a shadow way to sort of, you know, guide or give feedback, but really more than anything, just sort of reinforce that you're taking the right set of decisions. What does it take to take it from that to where, you know, it's instituted into operations and it becomes part of the daily operating rhythm of, you know, the operators? In other words, it becomes the tool that helps them make their decisions versus sort of this thing we're overlaying on the operations, right, to sort of check how we're doing. You know, that sort of cultural shift is a big one, right? What have you found is critical for that, Anil?
Bob, I mean, adoption is actually one of the toughest thing when it comes for the once a tool is implemented. Basically, if you make it as like an additional screen or a parallel screen or multiple screen, there is a fatigue with the operator. Yeah. They don't want to work with different screens. So one critical thing is the information should be contextual and the information should be relayed on their work console which they are working. So few 4 things which I perceive which are very important when we create a particular model. First of all, whatever recommendation the model is giving, that should be contextual. Second thing is explanation should be transparent. A person, operator, should be able to understand what is happening and why it is happening. Then output should appear in his console. It should not be an additional screen, as I said. Then operator, if possible, operator should also be able to participate in the designing the solution. Yeah. So with these 4 key elements, I think it will make much easier for the adoption part of it. Once the operator is able to understand what is happening, why it is happening, then it will be much easier for them to adopt and take it forward. Otherwise, it will become another engineering tool where an engineer will be typically recommending the operator to take certain decisions, but it will never be adopted per se as a inherent thing. So one of the example which I can quote is that when we done the ML based closed loop sensor for quality predictor in our RTO. Initially, it was a separate screen where engineer used to guide the operators what sort of action to be taken. Actually, the breakthrough came when the ML-based software sensor quality prediction started predicting the quality continuously on a consistent basis, and which developed the confidence of the operators. Then we made it as a closed loop system with the RTO, and this RTO then put the output, the decision making thing directly into the DCS console where the operator is working. So that made the life very easy. That made the adoption pretty quickly. So it took time, but we traveled that journey, and I think that is the right way to approach.
That's excellent feedback, because you gave us a guide really on some of the critical factors that at the operator level matter to them, right? Which is, at the end of the day, adoption is only going to happen, if the operator that's responsible for leveraging the tools embraces and uses them, right? And uses them in a way that helps make their job more effective. So that's great feedback. So, Gabor, I know you have a lot of experience in digital twins and real-time optimization. What's your experience on, what takes a program from being an initial success, but maybe it peters out over time because of the lack of engagement, versus one that can sustain value over a longer period of time? Do you have some critical elements from your side that help us make that happen?
I think so. Practically, the digital twins and RTO models are roughly the same. Just the question is the control technology, whether you have an open loop or closed loop, or you have different time horizon, minutes for the RTO and a longer time period for the digital twin. But the prone they are prone to the same peril, because they have two things what we see, which is causing model performance decline. From one side, and I think this is the more important one, is the lack of the maintenance. If you do not keep the model, the model drift is a inevitable action that works without you, that's the nature of nature of work, that definitely the model drift is happening. So when you do not have the proper maintenance methodology, then you cannot keep the accuracy of the model. If you cannot keep the accuracy of the model, then the other factor, which is a peril again, the usability will decline. So the accuracy of the model goes down. So the people, they will not use it. So starting with a good, let's say, proof of concept, that's good, that's nice. Having a good results, but if you let it like that and you do not refresh the models and you do not apply any kind of model maintenance, either we are talking about MLOps techniques for the data models or CMOP techniques for the process simulation models, what we are using. If you do not put this additional work in to these model structures, your accuracy will decline. And then the trust will just plummet, and people will not use it, and they will get rid of the whole story. And the negative stigma is on you, and you are not a good technology provider. However, the technology is good; it is working. But if you do not update your models, then that's a critical point. We believe that if we want to be successful in long term, then we definitely have to keep the model maintenance at a certain level, which is, giving the good performance, and the people can perform very well. Regarding the usability, when the model performance is maintained, that it is going well and it is working well. In that case, even it can happen that the users, they don't want to use it. As Anil mentioned, that another screen is another pain. So they don't want another pain. Nobody wants another pain. Higher salaries is a different question. But if you can, let's say, convince the people to use it, from one side, this is in our, let's say, little universe, it's education from one side. So we need to educate people what is the benefit of using these tools. But on the other hand, there is the good old carrot and sticks methodology that in KPI we put it there, and the management upside down pushes down that, guys, I want to see this level of improvement in results, in margin, and then just we make it.
No, but I think you've called out an important part. I mean, there's a technical piece, right, which is making sure the model is maintained. But then there's also a people related piece of this, right, which is ensuring that your operators continue to stay engaged and see the value. And certainly, KPIs are a way to do that. Education is a great way to do that. I think them seeing that their job performance can be improved and delivery can be improved, and if that means financial benefit for them as well and their performance, that's a positive too. Eventually, these become habits, I think, if we can reinforce these things. But I think you also brought up a really important point that it's not a handoff, right, between the technology organization and the operations organization. I mean, there has to be an ongoing relationship, an ongoing support, ongoing work to make sure the models are improved, that the performance is on track, and that the engagement is there. It's not simply you develop a tool and hand it off and then it succeeds. And I think we've all lived cases like that, and those typically die on the vine. So great feedback, Gabor. Thank you. So Mohammed, how about you? Can you give some concrete examples of where you've applied an advanced computation solution into an operational environment or a planning decision? And were there technical criteria? Were there things that had to change in terms of how groups collaborate or how organizations operated? I mean, anything that we could learn from what needed to change to make that be a success would be great to hear.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for the question. I'll give you an example that a colleague of mine basically developed a long time ago, and we keep that lesson basically in our heads when we try to develop technology. I'm not sure if anyone in the room has heard of Gigapower, like the reservoir simulator tool that Aramco has developed, I think 10 years ago, and it's now a standard. It's part of the standard process on drilling new wells. That basically any new well that is being drilled, the engineer has to basically provide the input to a team that will use the reservoir simulation, get the output, and inform the operation. So the tool that was developed in-house is playing a critical role in the core operation of Aramco. And the success of this tool can basically be attributed to many factors, as basically, in addition to what the team mentioned, the customer support, updating the model, making sure that the operator understands the significance of it and see and understand the rationale behind the results. But most importantly is that it was embedded as part of the SOP of an existing process. So once it becomes an engineering standard, a whole chain of basically training, monitoring that basically the tool is being used as intended, and so on. So that's I think is a great example that I can share with you.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's great. I mean, again, I think moving from where you're piloting a solution to where you're including it as part of your operating standard, I think that's where it becomes institutionalized within the teams, within the organization, and that obviously is a critical part of seeing the impact and seeing the success. Junaid, I ask you another question on kind of related to this, right? I mean, we often talk about pilots, right? We're going to take a new tool, we're going to pilot it, and even Mohammed mentioned the example of piloting at one location and then moving out to other locations, and not all of them having the same discipline or capability to see the same impact. What have you found that helps in scaling that that one pilot to 20 more examples across the organization? Or what are some of the things that are barriers to making that work? What causes us to get stuck in this sort of pilot purgatory at times?
Yeah. Another great question. I think the way I've seen it works best is first define what problem we are trying to solve and who owns the problem. And is this a problem that we want to solve?
Yeah.
Because you can automate everything, a lot of can be done. But let's get these three questions answered, and that gives us the grounding. And after that, I think we look at who are the key stakeholders will be involved. For example, if I take the example of our maintenance team, reliability team, they may want to do many things, but operations or the operators are a key stakeholder. So our goal is mainly first to see if we can get a bottom-up alignment on how this is going to work. Try as much as possible that you make it work. But there are times where you have to go top down because it affects, it's not easy and, it's an organizational change required. But if you take that step and you have to do it, just make sure that at least you've got as much leadership on board as you can. And then you go the other ways of making sure it's part of their job descriptions, it's part of their annual goals. And that's how first we start to get a buy-in. Then the second thing is, the only way this thing works is success breeds success. Rather than we as a transformation team or somebody else trying to do this thing, our goal, at least what I've seen is works is best, is let there be some success and let the functions talk about it. Let them hear from each other that this has come. How can we create a pull rather than a push where other plants are pulling? I would like to have this at my plant. And that is where it works the best. Yeah. That when the functions are talking to each other, plants are talking to the plants, and there's something fancy is going on with a little bit of marketing and change management, that works best. And again, as I said, if you go for a top-down thing, just be prepared more for change management. Make sure the key leadership and the management knows what they have to deliver, and they back you up that why making this change. Last thing I would also add, make the change a bit slow. For example, if the operators are not comfortable doing something, like just take the example of advanced process controllers and other things, go step by step. Your goal is really to get them to buy into it before you take any other actions. Because if they buy into it, the life is easy and it scales up very fast. Back to you, Bob.
No, that's great feedback. And, I think you have a number of points you highlighted there, right? Doing it at the right pace, ensuring the engagement of the operators and the comfort, not moving too fast where everybody in the organization isn't ready to move with the pilot to the next stage. But also what I liked is, thinking about the end state at the beginning, right? How do you want to scale this? Where do you want to apply it? Are these problems worth solving that are going to provide value to these other locations? And yes, you may start with a pilot, but you have the end game in mind and have everybody bought into the end goal. Are critical. Then if you show success in the pilot, you're likely going to have a lot more pull, bringing that into other operations. Gabor, one area I wanted to just finish with you on, because you have a lot of experience in explainable AI, and I think one of the things we oftentimes struggle with is this question of the human element in all of these things, right? I mean, it's how much do you need to pull the human operator, if we want to call them that, into the equation to get them comfortable with trust and using the tools. But then also, what's the end goal here? What role should human engagement interaction have as we move forward, right, in terms of the level that's given away to the tool? So I'd love just any perspectives you have in that broader space, because I think it's one that we're all struggling with a little bit. It's finding the right balance, and where are we in that curve right now? I'd be very curious your thoughts on it.
Bob, thank you very much for the question. It's a very great one, very, I would say, timely in our system. We are just about to step to a higher level of application, more use cases. And we bumped into a problem, and this is a kind of a pretty much human nature. If we have a new optimum for a certain system, whatever we are talking about, an RT or a digital twin, then if the results are in alignment with the operators or the technologists or the schedulers mental model, normally this is pretty much close to the business as usual. But if the mental model says the same as the digital model, there are very scarce questions. Everybody saying that, oh, it's okay. Despite of the fact that the underlying logic in the two different biological and then the digital system is pretty much different, but same result drives us to acceptance. If it is, deviating, then first we thought that it will be easy, that okay, those people are engineers and they know what they are doing at technology and then scheduling level, at least. And they will just dug into the models, and they will tell us, or they will just understand what's the reason of the different optimal point. No, the simple answer is that they want to see, kind of an explanation.
Yeah.
So far, we went there and we provided explanation, and we told the guys that, okay, this is the reason, and we went it through. But, we are just relatively small, limited team, and the people are specialized not only service, giving this kind of, telling the basic chemical engineering, but creative work, making new models and making new systems. So we turn towards this explainable AI, which obviously, since this is a new one, it's not that much easy, sometimes for really simple systems, you can have a very nice knowledge graph connected to an LLM, and it's textual description what really happened. If it's a simple system, it works well. For a more complicated one, obviously, that's a bigger challenge. So it's not that much easy. I wouldn't say that we have a big experience. We have some experience, and we already visited some pitfalls, to be honest. But, we believe that in the future, when we are talking about models and using the models and keeping and maintaining the model performance, we would need a calibration system. That's why I was talking about MLOps, CMOps. So we need to automatize the calibration itself, but also we need to focus on telling the people, if we are not sitting on the as usual point, what they like it, that the model moved away, but the reason was this one: feedstock, conditions, whatever is on the plate. So that is our expectation. It's a longer journey. We started to experiment with this one with some promising results, but we know that a bit longer development would be needed. And that's, again, comes back to the story that we don't want to make a quantum leap in one night. We just want to build this whole story brick by brick. Which is another problem to tell the management. They want to see that guys, you have pumped up this bubble of these technologies for the last couple of years. Now you have the opportunity to prove it, so bring it for next Monday.
Yeah,
I think you know it well.
Yeah, no, I know this challenge well. I may save that one for the end. I definitely want to ask a question around leadership expectations versus reality, but we'll hold that till maybe there's time at the end. Great feedback. And I think, how we engage the mindset of our employees, through the trust and engagement with the models is going to be a critical point. I think helpful to take the learnings you have there, Gabor, and I'm sure everybody's had similar ones in their organizations. Okay, so we've talked about the ownership question. We've talked about, the workflow piece. Now let's talk about the hardest part. How do we prove it? So let's go to our final poll. See that pop up here, right? What is the single biggest barrier to moving AI from pilots to enterprise scale value in your organization? Is it around, how the value is measured? Is it, the tools don't fit how the operators actually work, data foundations and systems integration, or change management? Love to get your feedback. And I think we're hitting on some of the themes that we've been talking about here, right? It's sort of the measurement of the value and the KPIs, and where the ROI is sitting is certainly in there. Change management and sort of the human element of the discussion, right? Ensuring that that there's trust and that it's adopted stand out. But you can see all of these fit, right? There are challenges with the tools. Actually, how effectively do the tools actually fit what the operators do? Do we have the right kind of data foundation, basic things like data foundations and system integration, which I know is a struggle a lot of places. It's easy to say, oh, we've got all this immense data to use, but is it all structured data in a way that we know how to use it and can effectively use it? So, but definitely change management and this sort of value ROI stand out. So Great feedback from everybody. Thank you. I'm gonna close the poll on this one. So back to my experts here, right? So, you saw kind of where the poll was mentioning again this change management question, the question over ROI and ownership. Anil, I'll start with you. Can you talk about how difficult it is to actually attribute the ROI to a certain tool? Because that's one thing that we've even just in regular technology support for manufacturing, and I lived this world for a long time. You often get in debates with manufacturing and R&D over, how much of a contribution did we give and who takes the credit for the value. So how hard is that here, right? I mean, it's, if you want to assign the value from a digital tool, how tough is that to do?
It is very tough. I mean, let me tell you very honestly, it is very, very tough to assign because of this particular tool implementation. This is the ROI I am getting. Basically, a lot of things, because a lot of variable which changes. There can be feedstock variability, there can be product demand shift, there can be crude price fluctuation, energy cost variance, maintenance may be different at that point of time then the tool is implemented. There can be seasonal fluctuation. I mean, there are a lot of variables which are in place. It is not only the tool which we have implemented. Still, an honest attempt we should make, as far as possible, try to establish a baseline. If possible, let there be a control group where we can do the comparison part of it wherever possible. I know it is very difficult thing, but still we can have some sort of indicative thing. Then typically, if we are having that consistency in gains, whether we are getting the gains on a consistent basis post the tool implementation, there may be multiple number of changes in the inputs, but is there the persistency of gain? Then whether there is repeatability across units and sites. So if we are getting that sort of repeatability, that's sort of make it a little bit clear. Indicatively, yes, there is some ROI coming out of it. But still, we should not claim that because of this AI implementation or tool implementation, we have created this much of value. Yeah. Instead, I believe there can be a better matrix ki how much a business KPI is moved. And if you have a causality sort of thing, the cause and effect because of what it has been moving. Yeah. Ideally, operation, digital and finance should agree on what is our baseline metrics. How are we going to measure it? And what is the benefit realization process? There has to be a rigorous benefit realization process, but it has to be agreed beforehand so that we have an indicative sort of thing that how this ROI, how this tool implementation has resulted in some ROI.
Yeah. No, it's good feedback. And I mean, I often, used to have this debate again on technology and operations. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't need to claim ownership for something. If we move the performance together, then that's the value, right, for the organization. I think if you can get to a mindset of delivering the outcome, to your point, you can do the attribution to a baseline, and you can make sure that there is a true improvement, right? I think that's critical to show. But oftentimes, if the organization's cultures move towards ownership of the outcome, then the fight over the allocation of the value becomes less, right? And hopefully teams and the collaboration can improve. So Junaid, I mean, if you're willing to do it, I'd love to hear about, an implementation that was a struggle. What are some of the things that you learned from it? Any examples or learnings that you have on dealing with some of these challenges would be great to hear.
So I'll share a small real life example that happened with me. It was my first assignment in transformation from manufacturing, and a tool was halfway installed. It was a big investment, and company has spent a lot of time and effort in it. Resources were deployed, and there was a commitment of a big ROI on this, that there'll be a big investment. And the real thing happened that when it was completed, everybody was saying, where is the value? So even the end guys who were supposed to deliver the value weren't sure. They were asking the project team, who said, this will give me this much value. How do I see it? What most of the time people miss. So if it's an automation tool, you will see the value quickly. But if it's going to give you insights, if it's providing you data to look at those hidden losses, then it's a different game. So the idea is then you get the data, find those hidden losses, and then, deploy some other solutions to mitigate those hidden losses. So this is really, I think it was a good example for everybody that before you start, it just, make sure you know who is accountable for using this data and who's going to deliver the value.
No, this is a great point, right? Because I mean, at least defining what success looks like before you start and what the value is you're measuring, right? I mean, it could be It could be, automation and maybe reduce resource requirements. It could be reduce costs for the investment. It could be higher rates or higher value, or it could be, as you said, learning that gets applied to the next facility or operation. It could be, a less direct tangible today, but longer term value. And it actually doesn't matter which of those it is, but it is important that everybody knows what they're trying to go after at the beginning, so they can kind of measure how they're doing. So that's a great one, and I've lived that one definitely. When you're in a debate about proving that the value's there, even though everybody's happy with how the plant's performing, it's a interesting problem. So, Mohammed, I'll go to you next, right? I mean, you're looking at the next wave of technologies within your organization. Whether it's the growth of agentic systems or maybe moving even more and more towards autonomous operation and optimization. Where do you see the next sort of big thing where there's value to be had, from the Aramco perspective or just broader for the industry? What do you see as the next big thing that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question to answer. So I'll give you two answers that I basically, based on my thinking. Yep. So in the midterm, I believe that if we are able to reach like a global optimization sense, that the IoT technologies, soft sensing, agentic AI systems become integrated in a holistic solution, such that the whole value chain of a particular industry is being optimized in a centralized way, we will be basically reaching the global optimum set of operation for the different facilities. The long term, I would say, gain from AI is when it's used as an enabler to develop new technologies. So if we use it by itself as a technology to improve the operation, we generate value quickly, and it's I would call it like an incremental improvement in terms of value generation. But imagine if we use AI to come up with a new technology that generates new value streams, or come up with a new catalyst that you can deploy. The question that you asked them from Junaid would be even harder. Like how AI would be, how the ROI of the AI would be calculated, but the value that will be realized from the end product, I think, will be significantly higher than what is invested in the digital technologies.
Yeah, no, that's really well said, Mohammed. I mean, so this was oftentimes for me one of the challenges we often got on applying these tools within R&D, for example, right, is that for sure it accelerates discovery, and it can accelerate commercialization. It can accelerate, how you work in the lab, how you get to a solution, how you can deploy and scale the solution. But that's potentially new value, or you could have done that without the tools, but maybe it would take you longer, or maybe you wouldn't come to the same conclusion. It's a very hard thing to put a financial number around. And so it's oftentimes one of those things where we get the most challenge, obviously, of applying these things. And it's not, there isn't value, it's huge potential value. But the baseline isn't a sort of thing you can measure, right? It's like whether you have an innovation or a discovery or not kind of question, right? And that's oftentimes where we struggle. And I think, but at the same time, there's low risk to applying the tool in these cases into the R&D environment, for example. So no, great feedback. Maybe just a quick question for any of you, right? I mean, if we look ahead to 2030, like how does the industry look in regards to AI? Like, anybody have a comment on, what do you think if we have this conversation that we're having today and we have it in 2030, will it be different? Do we think we'll be in a different place? So, Junaid, you have a comment.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt we'll be at a different place. The world is changing fast. I think the few things are going to happen. I can say this one, that the subject matter experts will be more powerful. They will have more tools at their disposal. I don't think technology is going to replace people so fast. At least, you will still have subjectivity in decision making. So that will be the case. The other thing which excites me a lot, I see that the younger generation have a better chance of learning quickly. They don't have to wait for 20-30 years of experience before they can be rotated among 20 plants before they learn this thing. I think the data will be at their tips, their analysis that they will perform will be very big, and they will be getting insights that we thought were fairy tales, and they will be able to do it in their third or fourth year of jobs. So I think that's where I see there will be a big change, and it's
awesome.
going to come.
That's awesome. Great feedback. Anil?
So I feel, Bob, AI will be the operating system when we come to 2030. We'll not be talking about the adoption part of it to that extent what we are talking now. It will be operating system for us. And second thing is we will not be talking about the ROI part from the AI. Typically, it will come from which decision of AI the ROI is coming. So AI will be there. AI will be much more prevailing in 2030. Of course, there will be human in loop, as Junaid has rightly said. There will be human in loop, but AI will be much more prevalent, much more pervasive in our systems.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think, consistent with the moving from a tool to a part of how you do business, right? And the end result is you're less talking about how the tool's doing than how the business is performing, right? So that's great feedback. Gabor, last comment from you on this one?
Yeah, three things. One is that this margin story is glorified. Who is making money? How making money? That thing should be first done. Second one is that we could have a technical solution. I don't know what type of a solution. Maybe not the 2 days. For sure, not the 2 days solution. Maybe a new disruptive technology will come in line. And, we can have models in one place. Models are continuously recalibrated by the machine itself. The human knowledge will be needed only for the creative tasks. So we don't need to apply too many people, but some very clever people on keeping alive these systems. We like to call it kind of a model library that in which you have all the necessary models for all the necessary systems. The third one is the cultural change side. That the people finally they start to use these kind of an advanced modeling applications, and then they do it, and they consider it as a normal part of the daily life. Just imagine, and if you remember, I think you remember the mid-90s crazy things that okay, we need to use Excel and these kind of simple things.
Yeah.
Now maybe this is the new Excel. This is the new way of thinking. This is a kind of supposed to be a skill. Even at university level, should be taught that this is the next level of the skill what you will need to be able to run these systems properly. And in this, let's say, game, obviously the explainable AI part of it, agentic technology is part of it. All the things that you are now talking about, or all the industry is talking about, should be channelized into a certain form. And, the skill behind it, that all people can use it, that's an essential part. Not to mention that, you can live out from external capabilities for a short time period, but without having an internal capability, an internal knowledge, a skill set, I think it's not a good situation when you are driving a car, but you are not have the driving wheel for driving the car. So I think these are
great feedback. Yeah. Great feedback for all of us. Look, I think awesome discussion, awesome dialogue. We do have like 6 or 7 minutes, so we have enough time for a few questions. So I'm gonna pose a few of the questions back to you all. Just give me 1 second to where I can see them all. So here's one. So related to maybe technology providers that could help the industry, right? So how can ecosystem partners, and in this case, AMD, so somebody from AMD has made the suggestion, help unlock potential in AI for the oil and gas and petrochemicals. So I'd broaden this out, right? Whether it's companies like AMD or whether it's, hyperscalers like the Googles of the world or OpenAIs, or even, companies like TCG Digital that are bringing solutions. How can companies best help the sector to unlock the value? Any feedback from anyone on things they should or should not be trying to do to bring the value in these cases? Yeah, Junaid.
I think first I would say, the service providers or technology providers are our partners. We are in the business of producing chemicals, not in the business of creating IT infrastructure, right? So they are the partners. I think where it can really add value is let the use case, the requirement, be explicitly stated by the user. Where I've seen is that people try to sell the use case. That's where it gets off the rails, because that use case may not be suitable for that person, that plant, or that segment. So I strongly believe that the recipe, we can buy the ingredients from many, but the recipe has to be ours. There's operations, we need to own the recipe.
Well said, Jay. Great feedback. Gabor? Do you have one here as well?
Yeah, I just can support this one. Our philosophy is to build an ecosystem around us, which means that we are sitting in the center point. We are the drivers of the changes, and we define what to do. But the technology vendors, they help us. They put us on the table. The solutions itself, which can be implemented in short time period and can be used efficiently. And our work is practically stitching together the working solutions and customizing in a form that all people will use it.
Very good. Awesome. All right, another one. If you were starting your AI journey today, where would you focus first to deliver measurable business value and impact? It goes back to one of the poll questions that I asked the group. Where would you, if you were doing your first investment in your companies in this space, where would you go first? Any feedback? This question of is it? Anil. Anil and Janae, great.
So if you are starting our journey, we would first like to see which are our low-hanging fruits. Typically, if we see the crude optimization part, I think I will go over the planning and scheduling part at the first thing. Second thing, where is my major expense coming? If energy is my major expenses, can I reduce my energy? Can I put AI to see which are my energy mix which I can use? Whether I can take the traded energy at a lower cost, or should I use naphtha for when I should use naphtha, or when I should use steam? So what sort of combination of energy I can use? Can I use AI for that? So those sort of things I would be look at first, where my major expenses are going, because there I can unlock the value very fast.
Awesome. Junaid?
I think I would just add to what Anil said. I will also say there should be a business driver, definitely, but we should also look at the pain points. Because sometimes if the people are tied up, they have a certain problem that's bothering them, and you ask them to do something else, we're not going to get that traction. So first thing is to build that partnership. It may not be the highest value thing to do, but if an operator has got some problem at his hand and is taking most of his time, that's why he's distracted, it may be a good value for you to resolve it. So then he can partner with you in improvements.
Excellent. I think one last one. Maybe I'll target with one of you. This is a tough one, but I like the question, right? I mean, one challenge, if we put the ownership with operations on sort of where the value should be captured and where the ownership and some of the decision making should be, then one point would be operations should pay for it, right? So are we at a point where you could take an AI initiative and put the pressure and the budget on operations to make the investment, have the affordability and spend on these things, and then tie obviously the performance to the plant manager and or are we still not at that stage yet? And I think coming from a state of trust and deployment and confidence, what does it take to get us to that point where it's part of their operating budget to make these investments because they know they're going to get the outcome? That's kind of how I would think about it.
Yeah, so I'll go first if that helps. I think the initial investment is owned by the company. If it's, there's no point in trying to say this is whose problem, because it's only going to delay the results and will make it defensive. And I think once you start, they have a buy-in, they should be, when you want to see the ROI, it either comes in cutting fixed cost or improving, yield and other things. So it has to go into the budget. There's no other way around this thing. But go slow.
But there is a transition here, right?
Yeah.
And I think
yes.
There is a need to demonstrate the performance, to the confidence to be built, and actually to know how it can be best applied and what kind of scenarios and how fast it takes to scale them. Because I think you made a great point, Junaid, about the pace of deployment that you really need to take, especially early on as you bring the organization with you. So look, I want to thank all of you. I apologize to the audience for us not being able to get through all the questions. Some great ones here, and we'll capture those and share that out. But I want to thank the speakers for really excellent insights in the discussion. I think we learned a lot about where the opportunity is to apply AI and where the value is. This is a question over ownership and how to make sure it's built into the key decision makers within the business and operations that have to own the result at the end of the day. But also, we spent a lot of time talking about the cultural journey of both the organization and of individuals, of people in the equation of what it's going to be necessary to accelerate the adoption and moving this forward. So I thank you all for the time, great dialogue, and hopefully look forward to the next one of these that we have in the upcoming months. So thank you all.